So one of the most talked about companies in downtown Chicago last year was Sprout Social. And today I am very honored to have the Global Director of Diversity and Inclusion from Sprout Social, Michelle Bess. Michelle, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to have you. Obviously, you and I have known each other for probably over a year now. We met at the Sales Assembly Conference.
Oh,
Which,
yes. Yeah.
yeah, and then connected again at the Ignite event, and then stayed in touch. So, and obviously the panel event that you, Gary Ablordy, Don, and Claude put together, which again, a big shout out to Claude for organizing that. So there's been a lot going on, and your life has been very hectic. So we'll get to everything, but first and foremost, can you give a little bit of description on you, your role at Sprout, et cetera?
Yes. So I lead our global diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy, and I manage anything really related to it's all across the business. So I touch almost every function at our company and really encouraging our team and our leaders to think about equity. And that's what sets our strategy apart at Sprout is system level change. And so we work to ensure that we have systems in place so that people feel like they are included, that they belong, and that we can ensure that we have a diverse workforce. But we believe that if we have an equitable system set up in place, then we can support a diverse and inclusive workplace. So I've been at Sprout for 4 years.
Got it. And with everything that happened last year with going public, and I was very excited for you, but I want to talk more about everything that happened over the last couple of months. Starting with the George Floyd murder. Um, how are you doing? How are you feeling about everything?
Yeah, that's a complicated question. I was talking with our team a couple of weeks after the murders of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Tony McDade all became public. And I said that I was exhausted, filled with rage, sad, confused. Like there's a range of emotions that I was feeling. I was just on a roller coaster, and there was this quote that my therapist shared with me. I'm going to read it. It became famous. It's an African proverb. It became famous from Killmonger and Black Panther, and it said, "The child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth." And that felt like the perfect description of what we are seeing in America right now.
Wait, can you read that again?
Yeah. The child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was looking for a way to articulate why people were so angry, why people were upset, why we were on this roller coaster, why people were protesting. And there was so much judgment for people who were protesting and people who were looting. But if you think about our country and the way that we've treated Black people for years, like this is what it looks like when you don't care for a people, when you don't care for a community. All of this bubbles up over the 400 plus years that we've been here since 1619. And then on top of that, we're in a pandemic where we are seeing again that Black people are disparately impacted by all that's happening. Like we are dying at a higher rate, we're getting infected at a higher rate. We are the essential workers, but we weren't essential until right now. Before people were just low wage, uneducated workers or whatever, but now we're essential. And so we're getting sick more often, and we aren't talking about that. So it indicates so deeply the disparities and the systemic racism of our country. And so pandemic, then the murders of not just one, but multiple unarmed Black people back to back is devastating. It feels like we are losing a family member. After my sister and I just cried, like we cried for like 20 minutes in my room, and it was just sporadic because it's grief. We're grieving collectively as a community of Black Americans, but also the country. And that's the really interesting part about this time, is that I think the rest of the country is feeling this differently too.
Yeah, this is. I mean, I was a kid back in the early '90s when the Rodney King stuff happened, and I remembered a little bit, but not really. But nothing had the global impact that this has been having right now. I mean, you're seeing that in countries all over the world, right? I mean, I have family in Europe and Asia and India and all that, and they've all seen, which I think is great, because yes, there's a lot of division, but I think that brings like somewhat of a global revolution and there's a bigger spotlight on this. So um, now you're a very successful business leader in Chicago tech. And I talked to Blorde and Gary, and I asked them this question, and I'm asking you the same thing for young Black men and women out there that want to be in business and especially in tech. Like, what advice do you have for them right now?
So many different things. I think the first is taking care of yourself. It is so important that we, one, know ourselves. What are the strengths that we bring to the table, and why is that an asset to a business? Being able to articulate that, and then knowing when to engage and go deep on things related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and knowing when we can't and when we don't have the capacity for it. I think often we are looked at as Black people as, you're the expert, can you help us? And I think we don't.
You mean as it relates to like diversity?
Mm-hmm. And it's not just because you're a DEI leader. Like, you could be a product manager, you could be an engineer, and then they're like, you're Black, help us out. So I think know yourself, know what you bring to the table, and know when you can engage and when you can not, when you have to say no. And then to work at a place who prioritizes diversity, equity, and inclusion if you can. I think we have the space to be able to do that now, to say, yeah, this aligns for me and it doesn't. So I think definitely for people who have the ability to look for a new job and transition, and I'd say, like, find a job or a place who cares about this and is showing that, not just saying it, but demonstrating it.
How do they figure that out? So I think
Yeah.
this is a question that a lot of people have because you see a lot of companies that posted about supporting, they're anti-racist and supporting Black lives and whatnot, but I have a very hard time believing everything I read. So as an expert, like, how do you determine, how can a young Black man or Black woman like determine if that company is for real or not?
I think there's a couple of things. You can never know for sure, one, but I'd say take a look at the website, see what kind of statement they are making about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Look at their leadership team, look to see if it is diverse in any ways. Clearly, we want to see Black leaders, but if you are paying attention, if you look around, there aren't a lot of companies that have Black leaders at their most senior levels, but look to see where they have leadership across the company. How are those executives talking about it? Do they have business resource groups? Talk to some of the people who already work there and ask them what their experience is like. Do they believe in like learning and development? Is there an opportunity to coach? I think as much as you can look at the website and see what's present, and then take that to use and talk with people who work there or have worked there in the past to get a little bit more information. That's really important and helpful. And then ask it in the interview. I think some folks have been afraid to ask in an interview, like, how do you all prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion? If your recruiter can't speak to that, that's a sign in and of itself.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, no, I really appreciate not just the conversations that we've had, but also everything that you're doing as it relates to this right now, because and you've done such a great job of branding yourself. Every time I bring your name up to anybody, they know, most people all know you. One, two, it's like they all speak very, very highly of you. So thank you for for doing what you do.
Thanks.
And I really appreciate you being on this and being able to share and express your feelings. And I look forward to working with you as it relates to this topic in the near future. And trust me, I will be reaching out to you for part one and part two and part three of what I want to do.
I'm happy to help. Happy to support. Thanks for putting this together, Benny.
Thank you, Michelle.